the topic is what recruiters are looking for. So I own a recruiting firm, and what we do is we are hired by companies that are looking for people. So I definitely know what hiring managers and companies and recruiters, like my staff, and I have a really, really clear idea of what they're looking for. Even though we help companies in a number of different positions, I can tell you, we can talk definitely about, some of the areas that recruiters are looking for, no matter what you're applying for. The reason I asked Nicolette to join me is because I often get the question, well, how do I prepare for finding a job, and what do I do to look for a job? And definitely we'll talk a little bit about resumes. So Nicolette's business is really helping people find that job. I'm working with companies to find the people. She's working with the people to find the job. So we kind of come from it, in two different angles. And I will tell you that it's really rare that I don't refer people to Nicolette, because she has so much experience in this area. What I wanted to just go through briefly is sort of what we're going to talk about in general. So, the question that you have is of course what recruiters are looking for. Well, first of all, let's start with, why is it important to know what recruiters are looking for? We're going to also talk just a little bit about the job market, because I've been in the recruiting industry for 15 years, and I'll tell you, it's just such, and the last, basically 3.5 or so years, there have just been constant changes in the labor market. And so I'm going to give you sort of a glimpse of what it's looking like right now, and what some people are predicting for the near term. And then definitely Nicolette is going to be talking a lot more about how to tailor your resume and cover letter for the jobs that you want to apply for, and also how to prep for an interview, because we obviously interview candidates all day, every day. And so there's definitely things that I see that I wish I could prepare them better, but it's not really my job to prepare people coming for an interview, right? Because I'm representing the company. So there are definitely things that I would want to talk about. I want to start with, why is it important to know what recruiters want to see? And I'm going to talk about a few things, and then I definitely want Nicolette to jump in. First of all, it's really important to know what recruiters want to see in you, because it helps you know how to tailor your resume, how to tailor your LinkedIn profile, how to tailor the application, right? Because depending on the job, you might have some changes in your resume. And also, if you know what a recruiter is looking for, you have a competitive edge over other candidates, right? Knowing what recruiters want to see gives you a competitive edge over candidates who don't have the knowledge, haven't taken the time to have the knowledge, haven't done any research. So you already have that competitive edge. And also, the bottom line is that knowing what recruiters want to see, it's going to improve your chances of getting hired, right? So ultimately, knowing what a recruiter wants to see in a candidate can improve your chances of getting hired by doing like really, really simple things, tailoring your resume, highlighting your strengths. There's a lot of ways that you can tailor what you're going to be showing the hiring manager or the recruiter by making some very slight changes from application to application. But Nicolette, you advise people all the time on this topic, because you often talk to people who might be looking at a few different kind of jobs, right? They are maybe related, but they're in different industries, or, it could be the same type of job, but in different industries. It could be sort of a slightly different job. It looks different in one company than another. So just how does it help a candidate to know what a recruiter wants?
It's really beneficial. So thank you for that, Jolene, because you really hit it on the head. A lot of times people take one resume and they apply to a lot of jobs that they themselves think they can do, but they're not actually thinking from a perspective of the recruiter or the hiring manager. So you got to think about, what do they want to see from me, not what I think I want to do. And it's going to take some work to actually do it, because sometimes people do one resume and they don't want to do any work. They just want to take that one and apply to a lot of companies. I had a speaking engagement earlier today. There was a young lady who is in education. She used the same resume for 20 different jobs and didn't get not one call back. And I said, well, honey, it's not you, it's your resume, because I'm sure you have the skill set, but that resume is not resonating with the actual recruiter, even the database at that point, because you're talking about the ATS system. I call them the resume robot eaters. So they will spit your resume out if it's not even speaking to what the recruiter is looking for. So it's very important to talk about what it is in your resume that will resonate with that job so that they can call you in. So you hit it on the head. It takes work. Finding a job is a job in itself, especially if you want the right job.
Yeah, that's good. So obviously it's really important to think about what recruiters want to see and think about it from the perspective that, it depends on the job, the company. You have to do that research. What I always say to people looking for jobs, and I'm curious to know what Nicolette has to say, when people are looking for jobs in this kind of economy where we still have relatively low unemployment and companies are still, needing to fill jobs and there are not as many layoffs, people aren't leaving as quickly. What kind of advice do you give to job seekers?
One of the things that was surprising to me when COVID hit is that my business doubled. And because everybody was tired of their old jobs, they wanted a new job. And I'm thinking, oh, COVID hit, and I have some actual workshops scheduled in person, and I had to cancel all those. So I was down in the dumps, like, oh, my businesses. And all of a sudden, I mean, the orders were coming in like crazy. I just could not believe it. That was actually my best year in getting the clients in, because they wanted to turn over a new leaf and really think about it. And so this is what I would say. You still have the opportunity to sit down and think about what you really want to do. That was the benefit of the people that came to me, because they had time to really think about it. And I always tell people, before you just get out there and start looking for a job, think about what it is you really want to do. Because at that point, you're not just getting another job, you're actually creating a career, because now it's something that you really want to do. Your heart is in it and you find room to grow. And then it's not so much that you can, now at that point, we were negotiating some good money, y'all. We were negotiating some great money. Now it's leveling off. So we can't go in there with these big, bold, I want this if you want me type of thing. You kind of got to tailor it a little bit back and be willing to negotiate in a not such a, well, I'm going to throw this number out because you're desperate and you need me, you're going to take me. So that's kind of waning. So you want to make sure that you're still showcasing your skill set, your abilities and your talents, so that the employer can see the value in what you bring to the table. And one of the things that you need to do, you have to own it. You have to believe it yourself, because a lot of times I see my clients go into these opportunities, I think it's a big I and a little me. No, this is a partnership. I'm bringing my talent and my skills, and then you have something that I need, which by way of salary and benefits. How can we make this work for both of us? So you have to think from that perspective, because when you build that confidence, then you're able to go out there, look for the actual job that you want, secure the interviews, and speak from that perspective, because you should never be scared of any of that if you own it, but you got to take the time to think through it.
Okay, so now let's kind of get to the meat and what is it that recruiters want to see. So I'm going to give some perspectives from how my team sees it. Okay, so again, we are looking at it from the point of view of companies who are looking to hire, right? I'm going to give you some information about how my recruiters are going to interview, some information about what they're looking for, and then Nicolette is going to fill in all the parts that I'm missing, right? So first of all, there's a lot of people talk about culture fit, okay, that they want to hire people that are a culture fit. Well, I don't like that term, because I don't think it really describes what companies really want, okay? I think what companies are really looking for are either culture adds, people to add to the culture, or even better, people who have similar values. Okay. So one of the questions our recruiters ask our clients, the companies, is tell me about your company values. Okay. Sometimes you can find this on their website. You can read blogs that the company has put out, but I always want to know, what are your values? Because you're not going to hire people with such vastly different values. And there's a lot of ways to figure out if someone is similar to you. So when you have an idea of what the company's values are, then what my recruiters do is they ask questions to get an idea of how you demonstrate those values, right? So say for an example is what one of our company values is doing the right thing, right? So if I was interviewing for people from my company, I would hope that they've maybe done some research to know what our company values are, number one. And number two, I'm going to ask them some questions to get an idea if they kind of live by these values, right? They can demonstrate these values. So one of my questions is going to be, tell me about a time when you have shown that you did the right thing, right? In a situation that might have been, where you could have gone this way or that way, you decided to do the right thing. That is a question that I would ask a candidate who is looking to work at my company, right? Because again, I want people who can demonstrate the values that represent my company. Okay, so that's one area is values. And I'm kind of curious, by show of hands, how many of you have, before you've done an interview, had an idea of what the values were for the company that you were interviewing at? Nicolette, what are some of your thoughts around culture and values?
Yeah, definitely, because you want to make sure, number one, you're interviewing that company as well. Because what if you read the values? You're thinking, I want a job, I want a job. And then you read the values, like, you know what? I don't like what they're about. So therefore, you want to make sure that you are aware of what they stand for, because it may not be the same thing you stand for. So I love the fact that it's about cultural values and not necessarily cultural fit, because that's just too broad. The values, because what are your own personal values as a professional? So you need to know those as well and make sure they're in alignment, because when they're asking those questions, they're looking from that lens. Will you be able to align with our values as an individual based on your past experiences? Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Here's another thing that we look for in candidates. And what I'm really curious about the next couple areas is, Nicolette, how can a candidate demonstrate what I'm about to say, some of these areas, without even before they've gotten in for the interview, right? So one of the areas that we look for in a candidate is passion. We want to see that they have some passion about the work that they're doing, and that they've shown some kind of passion in for the companies they're working for, right? That they really believe in what they're doing and excited about what they're doing and are motivated in what they're doing. So that's one area. And very related to that is commitment. We want to see that candidates have demonstrated commitment to either the area where they're working, the company where they're working. We want to be able to see that, right? Sometimes we can see it on a resume in certain ways. And I want to hear, Nicolette, more about how you would suggest that people demonstrate that even in a resume. We definitely ask a lot of questions around those areas when we're interviewing people for our clients. So Nicolette, if I said a company wants to hire people that are really passionate and committed to what they're doing, how would you tell someone that they can demonstrate that?
Number one, results. If you are a worker bee and you're just doing tasks, then that's all you're completing, and you're not telling me the results of your labor, you're not showing that you're engaged in what you're doing. You're just showing up, collecting the paycheck, and go home. Then I also want to see, do you actually share your knowledge with your peers? Not necessarily always that you're training someone, but if you are training someone, that's great. Are you mentoring someone? Or
Mm.
are you showcasing and sharing it in a meetings or what have you? Because if you learn something that helps the organization or your department, then that means you're engaged. So I want to see those things. And I talk to my clients about that. And also ask them to bring them any kind of successes that they had in the role, even if they said, you know what, I did create a new process because I identified workflow inefficiency. So I developed a process and I even did a handbook. So that means you're engaged in the work. But if you're taking your job description and just plopping it into the format of a resume, because there's a different in formatting a resume than writing about your career as a career story. That's all I usually see, a bunch of tasks. But that's great that you're a worker bee, but companies are not looking for worker bees. They're looking for people who can engage and push the vision and mission forward. So that's what I will look for. And I will also ask my clients for. You have to go beyond the actual job description, job duties, and tell me the results of your labor.
Okay, so what does that look like on a resume?
So I am pulling up some of my current clients now. And I will give you an example. Manage key accounts of 100,000 plus each in annual sales. Key accounts are publicly or privately traded with revenues of $1.1 billion. And then they oversee a $50,000 plus budget, and they took initiative to reduce freight cost by 50% and improve the shipping method.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. By the way, it's interesting because our company, probably about 20% of the people that we help companies hire are in the sales area. And that's
one of yours that you sent me.
What'd you say?
That's one of the clients you sent me.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Because I was going to say, that's what people want to see. They want to see numbers, results, you know. That's interesting. Okay, another area that we look for, so my team will look for when we screen candidates, you know, we look at their resume, we might do a few questions over LinkedIn or email, and then certainly interviewing. Another area that we are looking for is high EQ. So EQ stands for emotional quotient. So you've heard of IQ, right? Intellectual quotient, right? You're like measuring how smart you are. Well, there are a lot of companies that say, I don't just need a smart person. I need someone who can relate to people, who's a good leader, who has energy, who can influence other people. Those are all qualities within EQ, right? It's funny because I have one brother and I always said he's the smart one. He's the smart one. I mean, like, okay, he was in all the honor classes growing up. Okay, he did in high school, it was like all the college level classes, but he was still in high school, right? He went to, like, you know, the best schools and all that kind of stuff. And I was like a good student, you know, but I wasn't, you know, hitting it out of the park in college classes, right? But one of the things that I think really helped me and took him a long time to learn was the EQ part, relating to people, because you have to be able to relate to people in jobs, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. So it could be, you know, how you communicate with people, how you remaining calm under pressure. I probably could work on some of that. How you work as a team, right? That is definitely something that our recruiters are looking for. And so one of the things that we do in interviews to get an idea of whether or not they have high EQ, asking questions that are around those areas that I mentioned. So first of all, I want to talk just for a minute, and we'll talk about it more throughout the presentation. But one of the things that I really believe in for interviewing is called behavioral interviewing. Again, can you raise your hand if you've heard of behavioral interviewing? I'm curious. So behavioral interviewing, what I like about it is it's not just asking you, have you done this? Do you know how to do this? Can you do this? Like basically, you know, yes or no answers. When we ask behavioral interviewing questions, we want to get examples when you did this. Tell me about an experience when you showed this quality. Tell me about a time that you did this. So for high EQ, we might ask the candidates questions such as, tell me about a time that there was a lot of stress going on in the workplace. Maybe you had a big project, I don't know, a lot of stress. How did you respond to that stress? How did you respond to it? Tell me about what was happening. Give me an example and tell me about how you responded to it. And so the candidate is giving me an example, a real life example, right? We ask a lot of questions in our interviews to get examples of when they have demonstrated any of these areas, right? So whether they're soft skills or hard skills, we want to know, tell me about a time that you've demonstrated commitment in your job. And then maybe some follow-up questions around that. So for EQ, I want to get an idea of examples that the candidate has where they've worked well in a team, where they have motivated others during a really stressful time. So those are the kind of questions we're going to ask candidates to really get an idea. Are they going to work well in our company? Nicolette, how do you show some of that before a candidate has gotten to the interview? And then I'm really curious about the interview and how you prepare people for that.
And I pulled up a sample client.
Okay,
and it's good. Okay, so one of the things that I did, I went right to because what she was looking for was a job that was actually asking for that, and she has been touted as one of the people who had that, down pat as far as the actual interview, the emotional intelligence. So this is part of her cover letter. I'm excited to submit my name for the role blank. Not only is this role meant for me, but due to my success of driving results-oriented digital technology transformation in the financial space, but the job description mentioned emotional intelligence, in which I am well versed. I not only study it as an imperative to my personal and professional development, but I was also the keynote speaker of on emotional intelligence for the Women's Impact Group. I shared how I use emotional intelligence to gain buy-in from internal and external stakeholders to deliver impactful results. Knowing this role requires EI in addition to the skills, talent, and successes I have gained in my 20-plus year career, I stand ready to transition to this role with minimal training. That's just the opening paragraph.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Okay. And then I went over to when we talk about her resume, and that's just the introduction. So in her resume, I put right at the top, strong emotional intelligence, lead and drive cross-functional teams toward new technology and transformation at a global level. Now, how did I support that? Based on her management feedback. Penny's ability to drive a conversation and communicate clear needs and goals allowed us to define a strategy to get the desired communications from the team. She's results-oriented, so when a task is requested, she would strive for completion at any cost. Penny managed to simplify ERP PMO, that's all technology language, with little supervision or direction, with both her direct manager and VP confident in her running of the space. She applied her strong analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, and ability to drive actions to closure, resulting in great success.
So, Nicolette, let me ask you again. So are you saying that this was on the job description or in the post, it said that this was important, right? Okay. So then the candidate took that and not only created her cover letter with information and examples on EQ, but also included examples in her resume.
Keywords, bring it, tell the story. And then when I used her management feedback, they helped tell the story. It's better for them to brag on her than she, and she was in interviewing internally. So it made sense to put her management feedback in there because all they got to do is pick up the phone and call. Did she said you said this? Yep, I did. And so therefore it's right there. So you have to tell the story. So it goes beyond just a regular resume. If you're not speaking the same language of the actual job opportunity, they're going to bypass you. So you want to come out basically come out the gate swinging. So you want to put it out front and center. This is what I bring to the table.
one of the areas that recruiters are looking for are these areas where they may or may not be listed in a job description, right? Sometimes people say they're soft areas. So passion for the job and high EQ, teamwork, and commitment, right? All those areas are, sometimes they're on a job description and sometimes they're not. But one way to really know if there are things that are really important to a company, do some research their website. Remember, you're also wanting to look for their values, right? Research their website, research their social media, see how they interact with each other, right? Another area that is definitely looked for by recruiters is communication skills, right? So really good, strong communication skills is important in many jobs. Even if you sit in front of a computer the entire day, it's still going to be important. So I want to ask Nicolette, how can candidates demonstrate really strong communication skills? And then maybe we can actually go through, again, a few examples around that using some of what you're going to explain.
Okay, so one of the things that I would always say is don't be silent in the room. We want to hear your voice. As a leader in corporate America, if I have someone that's on a call that's silent, I'm curious as to why. I want to hear your voice because you have ideas as well. And don't think anything that you say may not be the best thing in the world. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes in what we say. But the fact is that you're sharing. So one of the first things I want you to do is share your thoughts, share your ideas, and do it so that they can hear your voice. And especially those leaders who are in the room listening. And then you're going to help someone based on your idea because they may not have even thought of that, but you have. So don't keep it to yourself. And anytime you have an opportunity to present something, take that opportunity. And even if you're an introverted type of person, because I hear that sometimes I'm introverted, I'm just not that outgoing, but basically you can make an impact one at a time. Go to that individual peer and talk to that peer and communicate. Talk to your manager and communicate to that manager. Maybe it's only 2 people you want to get on the call and be afraid of not speaking in front of this many people here today. So you still can make an impact, but you have to use your voice. And the way that you also can do that, don't be afraid of taking a course. Because again, with the texting world today, people have gotten out of the art of communication. And you don't have to be this mega speaker in order to communicate. But I will recommend that you take some courses to help you with your communication skills. And of course, you got LinkedIn that has tons of opportunities out there for you to take a course, and YouTube. And I always talk about YouTube University. It's free. Go out and find someone who teaches on that. And so you can learn some of those different things. And the last thing I would say to help your communication skills is to read. Read, the art of reading. Your communication and your language and your diction increases and improves by just reading.
Does Audible count?
Well, Audible can, because you're hearing the words as well. It's training your brain on the concepts and how to communicate those concepts. And they're saying the words so you can repeat after them as well. And one of the things, I'm going to tell y'all something funny about me. Okay, now I have a hard time saying doll, baby doll, baby doll, baby doll, or something like that. Okay, I'm from Chicago, I'm from the hood, so I say doll. And this is something that just followed me forever. And it wasn't until one of my friends, she's my best friend, she said, "Why do you say that? I'm tired of you saying that." I said, "What are you talking about? It is a baby doll." And she said, "It's not a baby doll. It's a doll." I was like, "What the heck?" But I grew up in the hood in Chicago, and that's what we used to say. So I had to learn that as a professional, and it's okay. So don't be ashamed. I use that story all the time because I used that, y'all, for so long until she told me the right way to say it. So think about those words that you're hearing by listening to the Audible, and also just simply reading something to help your diction, help your language, and also not just the language, the words that you can use in place of other things. I'm a thesaurus and a dictionary guru, especially when I'm writing for my clients. I'm looking for different ways to say different things because language is how you communicate it, not just from your voice, but also how you're writing it as well.
Okay, so if somebody is preparing for an interview, Nicolette, what are 2 to 3 things that you would tell them to remember in an interview in terms of communication? And then let's pick a couple questions and see if we can get some people to share. Okay.
Okay.
So,
one of the things, okay. One of the first thing I would do is not share fluff. Going back to what Jolene said, I want an example. I don't want you to tell me what you think shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda happened. No, that's telling me your philosophy. I don't want to hear your philosophy. I want to know what you did, an actual time that you did something and your result from that. So don't get caught up in so much of the story that you don't end a result. So maybe that's number 2. Think about a situation or story that occurred in your work that could apply to any of those competencies that they're asking in the job description. So that's a backwards way. If they're asking for several competencies, make sure you're focusing on those competencies. So when you're answering those questions, you're hitting on those competencies. And then you always want to make sure that you don't get the dreaded question, so what happened next? That means you have to be strong in giving a result that goes back to your resume. What is the result from your labor? Not just that you labored, the result. So you want to tell them the story. You want to talk about your tasks or actions. Yes, I'm talking about the STAR method. Then you want to make sure that you're telling a result from your actions, because someone like me in corporate America, as I'm interviewing you, I'm writing out, and of course I have a disadvantage because I do this also, but it's like STAR. And if we cannot fill all of those things out, you get a lower score in your interview. And it's not have anything to do with that you couldn't do the job. It's just that you didn't communicate it effectively so that they can tell you can do the job.
Okay, so tell us again what STAR stands for.
STAR is your situation or your story. Okay. That you're going to tell as an example to the question that's in alignment with the competencies that's in the job description. Your T is basically, now you got to think about the task that I need to do in order to resolve this issue or problem. Okay. And then the A is actions. Now, task is just like a checklist. Well, I need to do this. I need to do that. So these are the tasks. We can list out tasks all day long, our to-do list, but we don't do nothing sometimes, right? So what action did you take? So that's when I want to see the A. So, okay, that's nice that you knew what you had to do, but did you do it? So actions. So what actions did you take? And then the R are the results. Tell me how you were the shero or the hero. How did you turn this situation around? And that's when you put that pretty bow on it so that they know you took up, they're looking at also your critical thinking pattern. Are you critically thinking through what it is that you want to say so you can communicate it effectively? Because sometimes in these meetings, you don't have a lot of time to go into a long tantrum. You got to just say what you have to say and get it going. Yeah. So you want to talk about your situation, your story. You want to talk about the tasks, the steps that you're taking to do that. Then you want to talk about the actions that you executed. And then you want to talk about your result, how you became the shero or hero in that story.
Okay. So what's so interesting here is when our recruiters on my team are talking to potential candidates that we may or may not be sending to the client, right? And we're looking for pretty much what you just said, right? So when our recruiters are saying, tell me about a time that you had to communicate a situation to your boss, right? Based on the information that was given to you, right? And my recruiters are going to want to hear about, well, what was the situation, right? What was the task, just like Nicolette said, what did they do? And what ended up happening? What was the result? Nicolette?
Well, good deal. Yes. And what I wanted to go over a quick one that before and after that I just did recently for a college student, if you don't mind, so I can show them the difference. And one of the things that I do with my clients, I have them to answer some questions in written form, and then I revamp them, and then we practice them virtually so they can have a recording so they can go back home. And so one of the things I wanted him to do, well, I gave him a question. We all make mistakes we wish we could take back. Tell me about a time you wish you handled a situation differently, and what would you do if you can handle it differently today? Now, sometimes you'll get those 2, 3 part questions, and you have to keep in your mind, listen carefully, and think through what they're asking. And I give a tip, like this is a tricky question. I recommend thinking of a time where you were able to rectify a situation. Doing this, change it from the wish I could have, should have, would have answer to I did something to make it better. How you behaved is what they're looking for. So show you behaved in a way to make the situation better. So this is his answer. There was one time I was asked to do something very simple. I was asked by my manager to take an existing SharePoint structure and rearrange it to make it easier for the team to share the information. I was very reluctant and resistant to that task because there was a part of me that thought it was a waste of time, and I had more important things on my plate to complete. I ended up taking longer. Actually, this is my emotional intelligence person. I'm sorry. And she said I ended up taking longer than needed to complete my task, which was disappointing to my manager. And this disappointment was reflected in her performance review. I wish I could have handled it differently by just completing a task, regardless of my thoughts behind the importance of it. If it was important enough for my manager asked me to do it, then I should have just did it and not judge its importance. I would have handled this task differently today, regardless of how simple it was and unimportant. More complex does not always equate more important. So I changed it around. I said, okay, I learned not to only keep my personal thoughts out of an ask, and that a more complex assignment does not always equate to it being more important. So I came out the gate swinging with that, right? Then she said, here's the situation. There was a time I was asked to do something very simple. I was asked by my manager to take an existing SharePoint structure and rearrange it to make it easier for the team to find the information. I was reluctant and resistant to do the task because there was a part of me that thought it was a waste of time and I had more important things on my plate to do. And because this was an action-oriented thing, so we didn't do any tasks, but what she did, I embarked upon completing the task, which ended up taking longer than needed to complete the task, which was disappointing to my manager. And truth be told, it disappointed me too. But this was due in part to my hesitancy and reluctancy to complete the task. Now, here's how she became the winner. I wish I would have handled the task differently today, regardless of how simple and important it seemed. I learned if it's important enough for my manager to ask to complete a task, I will complete it without hesitation, as it is not my place to judge its importance, and it's not fair to say a more complex task should equate to being more important. So I turned it around because she was really beating herself up. I said, yeah, you want to learn from the lesson, but you don't want to also show that, you know what, I'm not doing what my manager say. No, let's do it in a different manner. So how do you say what you want to say? Okay, so I wanted to just give an example of how you can think through your example to make it more impactful where you are still the winner. Okay, so now for the resumes. So so one of the things I want you to really think about, if you're still using a resume that says objective statement, then that's very 1970s, 1980s.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of
you
it.
Don't even look at it.
Yeah. It's like, if there's a resume that's out there to send an objective statement, it's not going to get picked up at all because we already know what the objective is. It's to get the job. So you don't have to state the obvious, but instead you want to write a professional summary that summarizes what they're looking for and how you have the skill set that will be supported in the body of the document for what they're looking for. So think about maybe 5 to 6, maybe even sometimes 7 short sentences to show the impact that you can make. And if you have numbers, it's even better that you show those numbers. Sometimes my salespeople, they have made millions of dollars. I come out the gate and talk about the fact that they made this impact and made this many $1 million for organizations. And if they've been a salesperson for a long time, I add it all up. So it's even bigger impact. So meaning that they showed it. And then after you do that, you want to then put in your resume the competencies. So a lot of times the jobs are asking for specific competencies. So you want to have an area in your resume for keyword research or search for when they're finding you with those keywords and making sure that you can support it. Don't just put it in there, but you can't prove it, because we don't want you to get the job and they walk you out the door because you didn't prove it. But you want to make sure that you're including the keywords in there that you actually can do. So your competencies shows that you're competent, or even your skills. You want to show those things up the top, because if you think about a resume, the first, let me see, I'm just going to show you a piece of paper. So they're most times they want to read this and then they're going to go to the next one. They're not going to necessarily go down here first. So if you capture them with that top part of the actual resume, then you're going to be able to get them to be in a call pile so they can pass that on to the hiring manager to read the rest of the resume. You want to make it through that 3 to 6 second view. So when you do have it set up that way first, then you want to start talking about your experience that aligns with what they're asking for. So you want to put in some bullets to showcase that you got those skills. So you want to kind of bullet it under the actual job. And if you're writing these big paragraphs and just taking the job description and put it as bullets, that's not necessarily what they're looking for. Because how many of you all know that jobs change over the years? So just because you were hired for that job, you're probably not doing those same tasks anymore. So I want to hear about what you're doing now and also the results. So the numbers are better. Quantitative bullets are much better. But if you have qualitative bullets, and when I say qualitative, it means that if you're a support person, you still help your leader to get the results. So you could talk about how you're helping them. So that's qualitative results. So you want to talk about what is the result for my labor. And then when it goes all the way through your actual experience, if you have any kind of certifications that are in alignment with your expertise and with the job, you want to showcase those. Sometimes people forget about that. And if you are a person that does a lot of volunteer, you may not be in leadership in your current role, but if you're a leader in your volunteerism, you can showcase that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just your top 3 preparing for an interview. I'm going to tell you mine and then you tell me yours. Okay. So what I would love to tell candidates here before you come talk to my recruiters, please do this. Number 1, research the company, understand what they do, understand their clients, understand their customers, research their company. Number 2, understand their values. What is it like to work there? Now, you're not going to get all of that information from social media and the website, and those are definitely questions you can ask in interviews. What is it like to work here? But certainly do some research on not just the technical aspects of what they do, but also the value. What is it like to work there? What do they believe in, right? And then the third thing you absolutely have to do to prep to be ready is to have examples ready to go that you can use in different situations. Tell me about a time you were a great team player can also be used as, tell me a time that you were
a leader.
Great leader. Exactly. So come prepared with some examples that you can plug and play when they ask you questions. Those are my 3. What are yours?
Oh gosh, those are awesome. And what I would add to that, if you cannot find something on the internet that you have a question about, then that's when LinkedIn becomes your friend. You want to connect with someone in the organization who can really tell you what I call the TI truth about that organization because they're inside of it. And why not connect with someone who's in the role or similar role where you want to ask questions? And I always tell my clients, invite them to a virtual coffee or tea. Or maybe they like to drink Pepsi in the morning. I don't know. But then you only asking for 15 minutes of their time. Most people will give you that and just ask them about the environment of where you're going to be working. So take that next step. And then you have a cheerleader on the inside. Oh, I spoke to this person. They connected with me and they asked these great questions and they can carry that message forward for you. And number 2, practice, practice, practice. Do not wing it. I can tell, I can smell a winger a mile away.
Yeah, I agree.
They just show up because you're asking that organization to give you a salary, benefits, PTO, all of this kind of stuff. And you haven't even taken time to prepare. To me, that's not valuable of your time, nor it is of mine. So I want you to make sure that you're practicing those things. And I can't emphasize the examples. I mean, I say create an example bank. And what I always tell my clients, do an example bank because you all have experiences. Even my college students, I always go from the perspective of you did projects in school. How did you get them to do it? And you not be the only one doing the projects and they get the A like you got. What did you do? So those are the things I talk through. So you do have experiences, and it's not always work experiences. You may have had something that was in your life that you had to organize. Maybe your house burned down, but you had to go and talk to all of these people to get that organized and make that project go smooth. Maybe you're taking care of an elder one, and you know what? You have to organize your schedule in order to meet the demands at your home as well as the demands at your job. So don't just stop about work examples, life examples that you do, because we don't want to hire dull worker bees. So we want to make sure that you are showing us that you are a well-rounded person holistically. So yes.
Yeah. That was great. An example bank, and come prepared with questions. I wanted to repeat that because that was like brilliant. M has a question.
Yes.
Question. How do you negotiate? Oh, how do you negotiate your?
That's a whole
different thing. It's like a whole nother hour. How do you negotiate your compensation as an entry to mid-level without feeling intimidated to take a low ball? Also, avoid sounding demanding. First of all, know what the market, know what's happening in the market, guys. Do some research. Super important to know what are people in that job in your geographic area for that size company. You know, because a large company is going to pay differently than a teeny tiny company.
Right.
And, you know, New York is going to pay different than Florida maybe, or something like that. Right. So really do your research before you know, go in saying this is what I need to make, you know. What would you say to that, Nicolette?
Yeah, I would definitely say that as well. And I always tell people to go in with a range and never accept the first offer. A lot of times we're just so happy to get the job that we just take whatever they give us. There's room for negotiation. So you want to see and try your hand at negotiating and think about what your range is and the why. Don't just ask for money, just ask for money. You got to have a reason, a compelling reason on why you feel you are worth it. And so if that comes through knowing your value, knowing what you bring to the table, and how do you differentiate yourself so that they see, yeah, I want to make that additional investment because I need this person because of X, Y, and Z.
That's really good. That's really, really, really important.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Jamie.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. This is Nicolette, Jolene. Thank you so much
for having me.
We appreciate your time, all of your knowledge, and your just willingness to help us all out. So thank you. And thank you to the Colaberry community for making time for this as well. So thank you, everyone. So go out and kill it in your job searches.
Thank you. And thank you, Jolene, for inviting me. And thank you for having me.
Oh my God. Do you see how I couldn't have done this without Nicolette? Her perspective.
Well, and she was like, I know this is last minute, but I'm like, I said, okay, let me check my calendar. No worries. No worries. Glad to be here.
Yeah, her perspective is absolutely key. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Jamie. Thank you, Jackie. It was so nice to meet you. And everyone, you got this. This is great. First of all, I just looked up all the things that you learn at the school, and I have 3 sons, and I want them all to learn it. So that's important stuff for the business community. That is really important. But good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay. Please do.
Yeah. Connect with us.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye. Have a great night.